Welcome into FFPC Insider Access for July 9th, 2026. My name is Eric Balkman. You can find me on the X at Eric Balkman. You may know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, HSFF Hour Extra Reps, and of course the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I want to remind everybody that the FFPC is the sponsor of this show, and if you are looking to put some of the advice we're going to be dispensing out to you tonight to good use, check out the FFPC Big Gorilla, a $1 million grand prize, live and slow drafts filling up. We just filled a couple of live drafts tonight. There is room in the 10 o'clock and the midnight one if you want to draft tonight. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Remember, this is the final day of this week's Midweek Mayhem. What is Midweek Mayhem? Anybody who drafts a Big Gorilla team this week is going to have the opportunity to be in the drawing for 3 free Big Gorilla teams that I'll announce in the FFPC email tomorrow. So you still got some chances here to sign up not only for a slow draft, but for a live draft that is filling up tonight as well. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that, MyFFPC.com. And you want to make sure you're getting that 7-pick multiple times in a row, because if you do, you're going to get free teams. $125 best ball team, main event team, high society team. If you get it 5 times in a row, we're going to give you a jungle safari for 4 or 50 grand, whatever you want. Register now, MyFFPC.com. Pleased to be joined, as always, ladies and gentlemen, by my good buddy here, who has done this show. I believe this is his 3rd time hosting this program. Could be wrong. Maybe it's 2nd, but I think it's 3rd time. He's been an FSWA finalist. You have seen his work at Fantasy Points and at RotoBaller. 2021, he was the number 2 ranked accurate ranker for Fantasy Pros. Also contributes to Pro Forecast as well. Check out his work at the Vipers Network on YouTube and on X. Matt Donnelly, FF. Please welcome back to the program, Mr. Matt Donnelly. Matt, good evening, sir.
Good evening. And you know I'm holding on to that 2021 Fantasy Pros finish. I mean, we're already 4 years past that. We're already like 5 years. It feels like it's been forever. But, Eric, I got a bone to pick with y'all here at the FFPC, because I need to know who comes down with these, basically these rankings, the gambling aspect to these main events. Because me and Brian Drake, we're feeling criminally disrespected with an 11-1 odds right now. I mean, I get it. It's like the death division here. It's a group of death and the Hail Mary. But, I mean, 11-1? Oh, come on, man.
So let me give the backstory for everybody who's watching this, or Matt, you to explain everything to you the way I understand it. So the Pros versus Joes competition pits 42 industry pros, of which Matt is one of them, against 42 FFPC Joes. There are 7 best ball drafts and we'll be streaming them right here on Better Sports Network. We will be streaming them on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to watch them back later. There is a gentleman who used to email in to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour all the time. His name is Javier, and he's from Terre Haute, Indiana. Now, he has not emailed the show in quite some time. However, within the last 6 or 7 years, apparently he's been emailing Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo at Fantasy Mojo and FantasyMojo.com. He's the godfather of the Pros versus Joes. Anytime we cite ADP on this show, it's all due to his Fantasy Mojo website. Now, when Darren organizes these Pros versus Joes leagues, he lets Javier look at them, and Javier apparently emails him back what he thinks the gambling odds should be on each one of these. So don't blame me. Don't blame Darren. Don't blame anybody at the FFPC. This is specifically Javier and Terre Haute's fault for giving you poor odds. And by the way, you are not the only one to complain about this, Matt. There are plenty of people who have complained about this in the past, and plenty of people who have proven Javier 100% wrong. And you guys could be doing that this year. Now, the draft that you are in, the Pros versus Joes draft that you are in, it is going to be, I'm trying to find it here. You are, which one are you in? Why am I not seeing you here, Matt? I know you're with Brian Drake.
Yeah, we're in the Hail Mary one there with Sean Siegel, Ben Gritch.
Oh, yeah. I see it now. Okay, yeah. So you got Siegel and Gretsch as the pros in this draft. Siegel and Gretsch from Stealing Bananas. Then we have you and Brian Drake from Fantasy Points. Jim Coventry from RotoWire, Derek Brown from Fantasy Pros, Scott Pianowski, who just co-hosted this show with me a few weeks ago from Yahoo, and then Ryan Kramer and Sean Green from Sports Gambling Podcast. Now, if that's not loaded enough, we also have in this draft Matt and Andrew Stone, two talented longtime FFPC main event players. Bill and Dave Nowitzki, two brothers who have had a lot of success in the main event, including last year. I think they've won multiple main events. James Bednar, who I've competed against in the KFFSC before. You have Kevin Robinson and Pat Leo. And if that wasn't enough, Abib Egbatoba, the back-to-back mid-stakes $500,000 and then $1 million champion beg your pardon, the $250,000 and then $500,000 champion back-to-back years. This is pretty incredible. I will say, while you are only 11-1, it is not the worst odds in this draft. And quite frankly, nobody has better than 6-1 odds. So it's going to be a bloodbath, Matt.
It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be fun drafting, and that it's going to be fun to see who kind of goes off that ADP more than anybody else, try and separate themselves from the pack. So that's what I love watching these things, seeing how these things play out, because you've got to find a way to differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd, especially when we're talking about these big time events.
Yeah, each winner of these Pros versus Joe's drafts will win an FFPC main event, a free FFPC main event team for the following year. But second place gets nothing. So you do see a lot of home run swings in these formats, and you can watch Matt draft live right here Tuesday, July 28th, 10 p.m. Eastern time in that Hail Mary division. All right, let's get into it tonight. Coming up on tonight's show, Matt and I are going to go around the NFL in the first segment. Second segment, we're going to talk about some of the pieces he's been publishing for RotoBaller in the running back report. We're going to talk about some workhorses that you should be targeting, maybe some you shouldn't be targeting, some sleeper running backs, and then we'll talk about some potential sophomore breakouts there. And then in the final segment, we're going to talk about some more breakouts, not necessarily sophomore breakouts, and then targets that you should be buying in the middle parts of your FFPC drafts, which we will delve into deeply here on the show tonight. I think that we're going to lead off talking about maybe, Matt, the most talked about offense in fantasy football right now, and that's the Los Angeles Chargers. Daniel Popper, who covers the Chargers for The Athletic, reports, or should not say reports, he just wrote that he thinks the pairing of Omarion, Hampton, and Mike McDaniel, quote, could lead to fireworks. Now, I know that sounds like a pun on the 4th of July, but that was published July 5th. So I don't know if he wrote, I think he wrote it the day after. So this is legit fireworks. He wasn't just making a euphemism there. The quote from Popper: if McDaniel can build a top 5 offense, Hampton will be an essential part of that process, has the chance to be one of the best running backs in the league. That is not hyperbole. Hampton is, and I just got done listening to Jim Coventry talk about this the other day. You think about the outside zone scheme that Hampton is so good at. That's what Mike McDaniel is so good at designing plays for it and making sure that whatever running back he has, they're going to be able to crush it in that scheme. And certainly this seems like a very good pairing here. Now, if there's one drawback to this, it's perhaps Hampton's ADP, which has ascended to running back 7. He's now going at the 203. He is now ahead of Chase Brown, Barkley, Achane, and Walker. Matt, when you're looking at drafting here in the early part of the second round, you have those 5 running backs staring you in the face. Maybe you took Jefferson, maybe you took Lamb or McBride or Bowers or somebody like that. You want to get an anchor running back here in that early second round. Is Hampton your choice over those 4 other guys?
I think he has to be. I mean, I'm buying into this. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Hey, we're not just talking about Insider Access. This is like another edition of Duck Dynasty here right now. So we're going to talk Dynasty about here, and we're going to talk about Mike McDaniel's Dynasty. We're talking about a offensive coordinator / head coach, play caller, 2023, Raheem Morris, RB5. 2024, we know about Achane there, RB5. 2025, Achane again, RB5. There's a pattern here, and I see a path in which Hampton can be the RB5 here once again. I don't think it's crazy talk. I think he has sneaky ability to be the RB1 overall in fantasy this season. Now, he's going to need some pass catching and stuff to kind of go his way there. But we have seen Mike McDaniels get his running backs involved in the passing game. We also have one of the probably better offensive lines in the entire National Football League. Again, if they can stay healthy, Joe Alt, he's coming back. Rashawn Slater, they also went out there and they signed Tyler Biadasz and then Cole Strange. I mean, they've added to this offensive line. This is a team that added to the offensive line, added a new offensive coordinator that fits, like you said, schemes matter. And we're going to talk about the schemes, offensive coordinators, probably a lot throughout this show. But for Hampton himself, In games in which he had a great snap share greater than 65%, he averaged 20.1 fantasy points per game. I'm not worried about these other running backs in the mix in Los Angeles. He's going to be in line for a workhorse type load here. In 9 games, in 9 games last season, Hampton had 124 carries there, 545 rushing yards, average 4.4 yards per attempt. Passing game, caught 32 of 35 intended targets for 192 yards. If you kind of take all those rookie numbers there, and you don't even add the Mike McDaniels factor here, over a 17-game stretch, that works out to about 1,564 yards of total offense. That would definitely put himself into that conversation once you hit that 1,500-yard mark. Take away touchdowns and add those in. I mean, that's always the variable, but we see that 2023 season with Raheem Mostert, 18 rushing touchdowns, I think it was for him that year.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I think it was like 20 total, right? And
yeah,
3 more receiving. Yeah.
So we know McDaniels is going to want to get his running backs involved. We know Harbaugh wants to get running backs involved. We know Los Angeles is going to get running backs involved. So there's a good chance that he does finish as a top 5 running back. And when I look at those other running backs, I mean, I like a few of them there, but they've also got areas in which would cause a little bit of concern as well. So, I mean, I like it. I like the young legs going in here. I like how everything's setting up for him nicely. I like the options in the passing game that are going to open up things. So he's going to see a few more light boxes compared to maybe someone like Saquon Barkley you mentioned there, who's probably going to see a few more heavier boxes considering A.J. Brown's no longer in Philadelphia. So you got to take all these things kind of put back together. And yeah, I think Hampton's probably right there where you want him to be. RB5, I think he can be a contender to move up in the overall fantasy world.
With Hampton, I don't know if I'm getting this crazy yet, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter because his ADP will not ascend to this level. But you talk about 5, I think there's definitely much higher than a non-zero chance that he could be the running back 3 this year behind Robinson and Gibbs, which would definitely, I mean, that is going to pay off big time if you take him at the 203. A player that we will be watching as well as many of his teammates for the Chargers throughout the rest of drafting season, because I do worry about these Chargers ADPs getting a little bit out of control. Speaking of the Chargers, this has become more polarizing, I think, Matt, within the last 2 weeks or so. Adam Hahn, who I don't see in the chat yet tonight, he normally pops in here and he's talking about Quentin Johnston. And I think there's a lot of people within the last couple of weeks, I've seen Quentin Johnston ascend up FFPC draft boards, people taking him higher and higher. Popper, in that same piece that he was writing about Hampton, he also wrote that Ladd McConkey, he believes, is going to be the number 1 option for the Los Angeles passing offense this year. We have talked as fantasy players about a potential positive regression in the mean for McConkey after he showed us so much, especially at the end of that 2024 season, and then 2025 was kind of a dud. He was behind Keenan Allen in targets last year and only 18 targets ahead of Quentin Johnston. So Popper writing this, I think, is pretty significant for us as fantasy players to see something like this. The last 10 games of his rookie season, he had just under 900 yards, did McConkey. Had nearly 200 more in the playoffs that year. There are a lot of mouths to feed, so to speak, on this offense. I mentioned Johnston. We mentioned Hampton. Keenan Allen isn't back for now. I don't think he comes back, but certainly there's a non-zero chance of that. And then you have Njoku. You have Gadsden. You have Trey Harris, who it seems like the Chargers are expecting more things from this year. But I think this is interesting in the wake of these ADPs changing a little bit. McConkey slipped a little bit in the big gorilla over the last 5 days based on what I'm seeing at fantasymojo.com right now. He's down to wide receiver 18. That's the middle of the 4th round. He's right next to Neighbors, McMillan, Higgins, Burden, that sort of area there. But then if we look at Quentin Johnston, Matt, this is a player who's been ascending. He's now in the top 40. He's wide receiver 39. Right behind Metcalf and Pittman. He's moved ahead of Lemon. He's moved ahead of Sutton. You're looking at Johnston at the 804 right now. You know the report that we got from the Chargers beat writer. He believes McConkey's the number 1 option, but I think this comes down to, if you want a Chargers wide receiver, who's the better value? Is it McConkey in the mid-4th, or is it Johnston all the way down in the early to mid-8th?
I mean, if I'm looking value, I'm probably going to go with Johnston here. I think the value's there. We're talking touchdowns versus targets in all likelihood. I mean, the targets were pretty close last season. The chat, they're talking about 122 targets vacated by Keenan Allen. I mean, if you're asking me who the number one target in this offense is going to be, it's going to be Ladd McConkey. If you're asking me which wide receiver is going to catch more touchdown passes, it's probably going to be Johnston. I mean, that's kind of where we're at when we talk about these. Trey Harris, we know they want to bring him into a bigger role in this offense. And I really like the blend of the different types of wide receivers Los Angeles has. Mm-hmm. We know McConkey is a good intermediate type route runner there. The guy gets open, shifty, good, elite. We also know Johnson's the guy who's going to win at the high point there in the end zone. We've seen what Oronde Gadsden can do. We know what David Njoku can do. We haven't even talked about Brendan Thompson, who I'm going to bring up later on in the show, who's a guy who's going to take the tops off of defense, which should open things up underneath, which should be more beneficial to McConkey, but he's got to get on the field himself. And then Trey Harris, we saw what he did at Mississippi State. So, I mean, we've got all these different wide receivers, but the one thing I keep going back to is, do I think McConkey's the number one option in this passing game? Yes, I do think he's the number one option in the passing game. Do I think he's a wide receiver one for fantasy? No, I do not. I mean, we go back to 2024, wide receiver 13, 2025, wide receiver 30. And if we take a look at the splits, we saw his target share go from 22.9% to 19.8%. We saw his targets per route run go from 24 to 19%. First read, 29.1% to 20.4%. So we saw all those intangibles kind of drop for him. And now we're looking at Trey Harris basically filling in the Keenan Allen. And then we've got David Njoku coming into here. I mean, we got Omarion Hampton's going to factor into the passing game to a degree at some point as well. He's going to earn more touches, which means probably a few more targets. I mean, it's all going to balance out. I think he's going to be probably closer to that wide receiver 18 than he is going to be the wide receiver 12. But if you want to crack that top 12 when it comes to fantasy points per game, last year, on average, you had to have a 26.5% target share. You had to have a total targets per route run at 29.1%, and you had to have a first read share of 33.8%. And I just don't see McConkey getting any of that in this offense. I think it's going to be well spread out. I think it's kind of going to be like Chicago Bears offense from last season.
And the other thing to keep it, I mean, we'll talk about Brendan Thompson later, but you mentioned all these. Oh, and before we move on from McConkey, just to clarify, he's wide receiver 18 in the big gorilla right now, Matt.
Yeah.
Totally fine with that ADP, right?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think fourth round is probably a good spot for him. If you get him as your wide receiver 2, I think you feel good about that because he's going to have some weeks. He's going to get in PPR. He's going to give you some wide receiver 1 type weeks, but he's also going to give you some lower weeks because he's not going to be that touchdown guy that we want as well. So I mean, there's going to be a compromise there.
Well, and not only that, but how many players did we just mention that Justin Herbert has at his disposal? It's just common sense that this is going to be, the ball is going to be spread around, and Herbert's one of these guys that is talented enough to do that. However, Chris Ream, I'm not sure which, covers the Chargers for ESPN NFL Nation, said that, or reported that during minicamp later last week, the results were uneven, is the quote, as far as Herbert throwing in drills. Now, Mike McDaniel has made sure that Herbert is not throwing as much as he was in previous years to make sure that arm is not, weary and tired later in the season when they're really going to need it. He was working a lot on his shotgun footwork, apparently, according to this report from ESPN. And it seemed like and I don't know if this was just a footwork thing, that the timing was not down between Herbert and his receivers. I think Rim used the term out of sync. Probably not a big deal right now. We're talking about early July, but it does. It should set off alarm bells. Maybe not alarm bells, but it should be something we recognize, at least, Matt. When we talk about getting excited for this Chargers offense with Mike McDaniel here, it is still a new offense. He is still a new offensive coordinator. They brought in Njoku. They don't have Allen anymore. So while we can get excited about this, there might be some growing pains. Maybe it's a slow start for Herbert. If we look at the FFPC Big Gorilla right now, as far as Herbert's ADP goes, among quarterbacks, he is going right now as the 6th one chosen off the board, not until the end, or I should say the middle part of the 9th round. He's ahead of Hurts and Caleb Williams. He's basically a round and a half behind Jaden Daniels. Herbert's been climbing up. Are we right to buy into the hype for this, Matt? Or maybe we should be doing it at our own risk, knowing that it may be a slow, and you hate to get off the slow starts in the big gorilla or the FFPC main event. It's kind of, draft at your own risk, knowing that this could be a slower September for him, or maybe you don't see it that way.
I mean, I think it's somewhere in between the two. I mean, I don't think he's QB 6. I mean, I'm probably going Caleb Williams probably ahead of him. I mean, I just like that Bears offense just a little bit more than what I do with the Chargers here right now. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the right area. I mean, he's still a QB1. He's still a starting quarterback. You're still grabbing him later rounds after you've kind of filled out your starting lineup. I'm fine with all that kind of stuff right there. But, I mean, I don't have as much hair as I once did. And if he's looking like he's not as even as he once was, I mean, you said it. It's learning that new offense. It's learning these new wide receivers. Like, he's trying to get used to everything that's going on there with McDaniel's offense. We're talking about a quarterback here with a 66.5% career completion percentage. And it's not like he dipped last season either. Last season, he completed 66.4% of his passes, 340 of 512 for 3,700 yards, 26 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. And again, the weapons are going to be there. McConkey is a security blanket underneath, right? We know that. Hampton, he's going to be able to check it down. They're going to be able to run the ball. That offensive line is going to be much improved compared to last season. Like Justin Herbert, he took a lot of unnecessary hits last season because he didn't have either bookends, right? Both Slater and Alt both suffered injuries. That line was a complete disarray throughout much of the season. I have zero concern about Justin Herbert this season, and I think in that QB 6 to QB 10 is the perfect range for him right now. I wouldn't go out and reach for him, but I wouldn't hate it if he fell to me either.
Would you take him? So you would take Jaden Daniels over Herbert right now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think it's interesting to watch, and I mentioned this before. I think it's going to be very interesting to see, Herbert, Quentin Johnston, McConkey, and Hampton. I think those are the four big guys I'm watching for Los Angeles as far as the ADPs go. We're less than 2 months before the start of the NFL season. Those are the players I'm most watching closely. But I think Trey Harris is going to be interesting. Certainly, if Keenan Allen comes into the fray, he's going to be interesting as well. And then Gadsden and Njoku to see how people treat. I would imagine that Njoku continues to fall and Gadsden either stays the same or rises. But it all depends upon how these guys in camp are being used. New offense means new roles potentially. And if we see Gadsden being peppered or vice versa, if Njoku's being peppered, then all of a sudden we're going to see ADP changes there going forward as well. I want to go down to New Orleans for our next topic here, or over to New Orleans from Los Angeles, and bring up Travis Etienne. Now, this is a player. It's so weird, dude. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of stuff. And I'm just when I think I'm all dialed in for how what I think about these players this season, Matt, I listen to one guy talking up Travis Etienne and how this is great. And he's set up for a lot of success with Kellen Moore and the fast-paced offense and the offense in general on the come up down there. And then I hear other people talking about him. This guy is not efficient. He's not a great pass catcher, and I think that, and then the ADP is quite a bit higher on Etienne as well. And to that point, New Orleans.football's Nick Underhill believes that he is the quote X factor for the Saints this season. Now, he thinks that Etienne is going to be focused on offense. Like he's going to be a meal ticket on this team, maybe the meal ticket. But he also thinks that if Kamara is not on this team, it could be even bigger. The role for Etienne could be even bigger. Although I think Underhill kind of like, if you read between the lines of this report, he makes it seem like Kamara is not going to go anywhere for 2026, but that's still up in the air. He talked about him being a quote full volume starter, a quote 3-down player. And he doesn't believe that if Kamara is on the team, it's going to be a significant change. It will be noticeable, negligible for sure, but not significant. He is projecting Etienne to go just over 1,000 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, getting over the 40 catch mark this season, over 300 receiving yards, and an additional 3 touchdowns here, which to me seems aggressive, but maybe not. If you total that all up for full PPR, that would put him as running back, or would have put him as running back 15 in 2025. And where is he being drafted right now? I'll use the main event ADP on this one. By the way, the FFPC main event, if you're looking to join that, we have live and slow drafts filling up on the weekend. Slow drafts fill up all week, but then the live drafts pop off on the weekends right now. $1 million grand prize in that as well. And you are getting $600 off each additional team you get off of you. After you buy your first one, you're getting $600 for every single main event you buy after that. In the main event right now, he would have finished in Underhill's projections as running back 15 last year, Matt. He's going as running back 16 in the main event right now at the 311, behind Breece Hall, behind Kyron Williams, and ahead of Jacobs, Skattebo, and Javonte Williams. I started off this conversation by saying I don't know what to think about Etienne this year. I know there's smart people that are respecting this industry on opposite ends of the spectrum. We know where Nick Underhill falls in on this as far as his volume. How do you feel this year about one Travis Etienne as a New Orleans Saint?
It's hard to go against Nick because he's right there. He's got this finger on the pulse of that New Orleans Saints team, right? I mean, he's been reporting all Saints news here for quite some time. But I kind of want to, when I think of X Factor, I think like Dante Hall, Kansas City Chiefs, a guy who's going to make a difference out there every single time, every time he touches the ball. I don't see that with Etienne. By the way, I still can't call him that. It still feels weird to even think like it's still Etienne to me, right? But we'll be respectful of Etienne or however you want to call it. But I take a look, and my friends over at Fantasy Points made a very good point. They posted this on Twitter, and if you take a look at Etienne and Kamara from 2023, the 2024 season, the 2025 season, so we got 3 years of kind of mixing them together. There's not a whole lot separating the two running backs. And we're talking about Etienne as a guy who's possibly flirting with RB1 status. And we're talking about Kamara here, who's should be retiring. I don't think that's fair on that case. Like, if you take a look at the yards per carry, Etienne over that period of time, 3.96, Kamara 3.92. Explosive run rate, 10.2% to 10.1%. Success rate, 44.9% for Etienne, 48.1% for Alvin Kamara. Yards after contact per attempt, 2.35 to 2.06. Missed tackles forced per attempt, 0.16 to 0.14. Like, these are two very close running backs. And I think where people kind of got off on the Kamara train last season is the fact that when we take a look at his career, he was averaging 4.98 receptions and 6.3 targets per game. That was a contrast to what we saw last season with 3 receptions and 3.45 targets last season. So if we can get Kamara back involved in the passing game, I think these two running backs are a good 1-2 combination, but we're seeing their ADPs kind of go in the opposite direction. We're seeing a mid RB2 versus a running back. I don't know where Alvin Kamara is going currently right now as ADP, but I think I saw it like in the mid 40s last time. I mean, look, statistically, metrically, whatever you want to say, both these running backs are very similar. And I don't know what X factor means to certain people, but when I think of X factor, I think of a difference maker. And I don't see Etienne as that difference maker in this Saints offense. And that's just kind of where I'm at with that.
Kamara has actually tumbled a little bit, running back 53 now over the last 5 days. He is now a 13th, sort of like a 13-14 round pick on that turn right there. This is Bigsby, Algier, and Marshawn Lloyd territory that Kamara is going. How do you feel about that ADP? Is that a guy that you'd be looking to get because of those pass catching chops at that spot?
If they can get him back involved in the passing game, I mean, that's the key. Like, we're talking about a difference of basically 2 receptions per game difference from his career versus what we saw last season. I think Kamara still has that. I don't think he's quite as explosive as he once was, but it just feels like at RB 53, he feels like someone you should be rostering on your team in the event thereof. We've got some other running backs there in New Orleans as well, like Neal and stuff, but I don't think either one of those running backs after Kamara are going to play a factor unless we have an injury down in the Bayou. So it's these two running backs. I think we're going to see a very similar split between the two of them. I think there's enough respect on Kamara's name in New Orleans where he's not going to be discarded altogether, even though they paid Etienne. Yeah. But for me, I look at the numbers, and yes, Etienne had a good season last season, but it's one season of. And I mean, if we look at the work of both of them in the last 3, it's very similar.
Matt, if Etienne was to go down, how much contingent upside is there for Kamara, or do you view that as like Kendra Miller and who's the other guy they drafted out of Kansas? Devin Neal. Yeah. Is it like more of like a committee type thing? How do you think that Kellen Moore would treat that if Etienne's not available?
I mean, I think they don't believe Kamara is what he once was. I mean, he's a little bit older. We know about where that age cliff is. We're going to talk about that age cliff with some of these other running backs. I think these other ones, Miller and Neal, would have more of an impact if Etienne was out than if Kamara went down, right? Mm-hmm. I think Kamara offers more pass catching ability than Etienne does, and I don't quite think those other running backs have that Kamara type ability in the passing game. So I don't think they'd be as big of a factor if Kamara went down versus Etienne.
I think it'd be interesting to see what would happen. Now, I'm not rooting for an injury here, but if it were to happen, to see how New Orleans would divvy up that backfield between those three players. Certainly, Kamara would probably own third downs, but first and second, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if that were to ever happen. Sticking in that same report from Underhill for New Orleans Football, he also talked about Jordyn Tyson and Tyler Shough and how these guys are very complementary as far as their skills go. He talked about the best routes that Jordyn Tyson runs are actually the best ones that not only Tyler Shough throws, but he throws them a bunch, right? Yeah. And Tyson is not necessarily the most complimentary player to Chris Olave, but these guys are pretty multifaceted. In other words, they can be chameleons, right? They can go out there. If Olave's running the deep stuff, Tyson can take underneath. If Tyson's running the deep stuff, Olave can go underneath. And you know, as a defensive coordinator, you don't really know what to prepare for on any given week. Both of them are lining up outside. Both of them are lining up in the slot. Underhill believes Olave is still the number one guy there, but he thinks that this could be a 1A. I'm putting words in his report here, but he makes it seem like a 1A, 1B thing, perhaps in the near future with that. You understand that Olave's had the concussions. Tyson has had the hamstrings problems last year at Arizona State as well. Underhill says he's not worried about the hamstring stuff unless it lingers into training camp. He did say a safe projection for Jordyn Tyson this year: 55 catches, 700 yards, 5 touchdowns, which to me, I'd be on board with as far as a safe projection, safe projection that he's going to pay off on his ADP at that. It would have put him in the top 40 receivers last season. And again, that we're talking about conservative. If he does more than that, he's obviously finishing higher. You think about this is a Jordyn Tyson question, Matt. And I promise I'm going to get to it. You think about where we were at on Jordyn Tyson prior to the NFL draft. You think about where we were at on him in rookie drafts. And now that we've gotten into redraft season, he is wide receiver 33 at the 6'11 right now, according to the Big Gorilla ADP. This is Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrison, Parker Washington territory. And I think all four of those guys have their share of warts, but they all have their share of positivity there as well. Where are you at when it comes to Tyson going at the end of the 6th round, and how likely he is to pay off fantasy owners at that ADP this season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the ADP. I mean, end of 6, early 7, I feel a little bit better in the 7th than I do the 6th. Wide receiver 3 feels about right for him as far as his ADP is concerned. I mean, we're talking about one of the you mentioned the Olave and Tyson connection there. Tyson is an elite route runner. We've seen his, especially the short game, but we also know he can stretch the field. 14.4 yards per reception throughout his college career on 158 reception. So he's shown the ability to separate. He's shown the ability to go deep. We know he's an above the rim specialist there, the 67.3% catch rate, a 1.6% drop rate back in 2025, a 67.7% success rate versus man coverage, 85.6% against zone coverage. I mean, that was the 5th best amongst any Power 5 wide receiver since 2021. And we know about his ability to play the middle of the field, which Olave can do. Olave can go deep. Olave can catch screen passes. So I really like what these guys can do. I think that conservative number is something I feel comfortable with as well. I really believe that this Saints offense can get things going there. Jawan Johnson can mix in there. And then we talked about both Etienne and Kamara in the passing game as far as running backs are concerned and how that changes that dynamic as well. So I really think that if you can get him as a wide receiver 3, he's going to have wide receiver 2 upside on any given week. And he could be one of those guys that could help you win your matchup any given week, really, especially if you're looking at best ball. I mean, he could be one of those guys that surprises from time to time, especially if teams shift their coverages over, maybe bracket Chris Olave to a degree. I mean, he's a guy who can win one-on-one. The problem with Tyson's always going to be, we're going to talk about the hamstring issue, but the biggest thing we're going to talk about is press coverage. He's not a big guy. He's not a thick guy. He's a guy that you can press and probably keep him on the line. So we'll see how the Saints work with him in the offseason when it comes to beating press coverage. If he can do that, I mean, I'm all in on that.
The Saints offense in general, I wouldn't say I'm all in on it, but whatever the next step down is, that's what I am.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic for sure. Shough, Olave, Tyson, maybe probably not Etienne so much, but definitely Juwan Johnson I've been drafting a lot of too, given how late he's going. I'm very excited about not only the head coach and Moore there, the way he runs his offenses, but where they play, the division that they're in. I think we're in for several shootouts with New Orleans this year. Obviously, Shough is going to have to stay healthy for that too as well. This is a guy that was hurt throughout his collegiate career. Last year, he put it all together, stayed healthy all season. Fingers crossed he can do that again. Tyson was an interesting pick in rookie drafts this year. An interesting pick in rookie drafts last year was Cam Skattebo, Matt. And we look at what his new head coach, John Harbaugh, has said about him in New York. This came out earlier this week. Harbaugh was asked about Skattebo, and he called him a top-tier back, and he's planning on playing that way this year. He was taking 11 on 11 reps before the end of the early offseason. I think the report was that he was sneaking into this, like maybe he shouldn't have been doing it, but he did, and it obviously was fine. There was a celebrity softball game for Brian Burns where he did a backflip at it, which is great to see. From you think about how nasty that ankle injury that he had. Jordan Renan, who covers the Giants for ESPN, believes that once training camp rolls around here in a few weeks, he's going to be a full participant right away. Skattebo, one of the things that makes him so good is his no-nonsense style when he's running the football. He would rather run over you than run around you, even though he probably could run around some players that are trying to tackle him. You worry about him from a dynasty standpoint, not only because of that style of play, but because of the position he plays as well. But focused on redraft here, certainly a player that has top 12 upside in 2026. Certainly a player that, Matt, you don't have to pay top 12 pricing for Skattebo to get him on your team right now. In fact, in the Big Gorilla, we're looking at running back 19 at the 404. He's going after Jacobs and Javonte Williams. He's going ahead of Quinshon Judkins and David Montgomery. I know I would much rather have Skattebo than Judkins this year. It always seems like it's coming back to me in drafts, and I have to pivot to Judkins instead of Skattebo, because Skattebo just never seems to make it to me there. But I like David Montgomery quite a bit this year. The ankle concerns for me in regards to Skattebo are not nearly as significant as they were a few months ago. I feel really good about it, and I feel good about this guy putting up numbers in this offense. You also have to talk about, when you talk about the Giants, is who's catching the ball from Jackson Dart. You know, you have Neighbors coming off this injury, likely is a brand new player in this offense this year. And then after that, it's a rookie in Malachi Fields. It's Darnell Mooney. It's Darius Slayton, you know, guys that have had the opportunity and haven't really taken advantage of it in the past. I know Tyrone Tracy's there as well. But you think about Skattebo and how much he might have to be factoring in to this passing offense as well as running the football. I'm getting all good news and good vibes about Skattebo here. This is a player I'm moving up my boards so I can start getting him instead of letting other people snipe him on me. Your thoughts on Skattebo as we enter into the majority of July drafting here, Matt?
I'm a big Skattebo guy there. When we talk about that ankle injury, his style of play, I'm not worried about his ankle. He's not worried about cutting back. He's looking to run somebody over. So I'm not worried about the ankle. I mean, obviously, we've seen people coming back from that injury. There's been a bit of a getting used to a ramping up period there, so to speak. What I want to talk about here is we kind of mentioned, first off, looking at the numbers last season, 8 contests, 4.1 yards per carry. He finished his rookie campaign with just 410 yards there before he was taken out by injury. Nothing changed out of the backfield there. We can safely project Skattebo is probably going to be around 250 plus carries. He could probably even see upwards of 275, maybe 300 plus touches when you factor in the passing game. Remember, I still think Malik Neighbors is a very good candidate to start the season on the PUP, right? He just had a second surgery to clean some things out there because he wasn't as bendy as he would like, or however that kind of broke down. But I mean, I think 1,000 yards, 250 plus rushes, I think that's a soft projection of what he is. I mean, we had a running back here in college touched the ball 339 times in just 13 games at Arizona State. So we know he can handle the load. But the one thing I want to keep talking about, we talked about that week 2 to week 8 stretch in which he was healthy. He was averaging 17.8 fantasy points per game. That had him as a top 10 running back in fantasy. I will take him over Etienne, who's going ahead of him as well in fantasy drafts. But the one thing we talk about, schemes matter. And I think one of the things that's kind of underrated is the new senior offensive assistant in New York, and that is Greg Roman. Greg Roman, we talked about this. His offense has deployed a zone concept run rate at the 5th lowest over the last 2 seasons at 45.2%. We also know that that's when Skattebo was at his worst. He had a success rate of 45.2%, but he had the 8th highest rate of success at 59% when it came to man gap concepts, which we're going to see the Giants probably run a little bit more. So now this offense is catering a little bit more towards him. Greg Roman likes to run the ball. John Harbaugh likes to run the ball. The New York Giants are going to want to run the ball because they have no one else in the passing game to count on. So this all is turning into a very good situation that a healthy Cam Skattebo is going to have success. And that's the key here. The way he runs is not conducive to staying healthy. We can all admit that. I mean, he's in the back corner there eating crayons or whatever he's doing, getting ready for the pregame, and he's just going out there to hit somebody. That's his entire purpose. But we know that when he's healthy, he's able to produce. He did it in college. We've seen it through a 5-6 week period there in the National Football League. This is a guy who could produce high-end fantasy numbers when given an opportunity, when he's healthy and when he's on the field. And with the adjustment in the run game and the scheme and the run blocking, I think Skattebo is a top 12 running back this season in fantasy, and you're getting him an absolute steal going there anything later than RB 18, right?
The longer or in training camp, the better he looks. This is a guy that's really going to send up draft boards, because I still think people are a little bit skittish about drafting him, given that we have not seen him out there yet, and which is fine if you're healthy. If you ended last season healthy, nobody cares, but he didn't. And once we see him out on the field and he's running and cutting and looking good, and the vibes are good from his teammates and from his coaches, we're going to see Skattebo move up, quite frankly, up to that wide receiver 13, wide receiver 4, running back 13, running back 14 level, maybe even top 12. We'll see. That's a little aggressive, but it's certainly a non-zero chance of it happening. Speaking of running backs here, let's get into this report from Chad Graf from The Athletic, who covers the New England Patriots. Beg your pardon. He believes that there's going to be fewer stacked boxes for Drake May and specifically Trevion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson in that backfield. Why? Well, A.J. Brown has that sort of effect on defenses that you need to account for him. They obviously also went out and signed Romeo Doubs from the Packers as well. We looked back at the previous season, Matt. The Patriots had the second highest rate of stacked boxes at 52%. They clearly did not respect the Kayshon Bouttys, the Hunter Henrys of the world on this New England team, or Steph Diggs, quite frankly, was on that team last year. And certainly that made the sledding a little tough for both Henderson and Stevenson. If you're a believer in that, and New England's rushing, if the offense just takes a step forward because of the presence of A.J. Brown and Romeo Doubs, certainly a rising tide raises all boats. But this gets back to the Stevenson versus Henderson discussion. And the way I've always framed it over the course of the last couple of months to guests and players, Matt, is what's the better value? And I guess I can still frame it that way, but man, these guys are getting closer in ADP. Right now in the Big Gorilla, Henderson's running back 22. He is going off the board at the 504. Stevenson is running back 30. So now he's in the top 30 running backs going off the board at the 706. Still 2 rounds separate them. How do you feel? Are you team Henderson this year, or are you team Stevenson if you had to pick one Patriots running back?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Head over to RotoBaller.com today to catch my latest article where I broke down Stevenson versus Henderson and how you should go. Based on ADP, I'm taking Stevenson over Henderson every day of the week. And it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what the dynasty community thinks. It matters what Vrabel and McDaniels thinks. That's all that matters. And clearly they have trust in one running back over the other. Do I think Henderson is the more explosive back? Yeah, I think Henderson's the more explosive back. Do I think he's the better value in Dynasty? Yeah, I think he's the better value in Dynasty. But I think Stevenson is still going to get his this season. And when I take a look, I got the one question was, who should you draft in fantasy? If I take a look at my crystal ball here and I break it down, the one thing that we do know about Josh McDaniels, that offensive coordinator, is he does have a tendency to run certain types of schemes. And Henderson is the better zone scheme runner, but where he averaged 5.37 yards per carry to Stevenson's 4.19. But McDaniels likes his his gap kind of schemes, and that's where the script kind of flips there. 4.94 for Stevenson versus 4.61 per carry for Henderson. And we saw success, and Henderson's success rate is actually one of the lowest in the leagues when it comes to the man gap zone. So if you want to take that even a little bit further, I like to see what we've seen in the latest. I mean, I think what was the number there? 30% of all of Henderson's fantasy production came in those 2 games in which Stevenson was out. I mean, that's kind of a big thing not to miss out on here. Like, we're talking about a guy who only produced when Stevenson was out. I mean, and we know what he can do. So as long as Stevenson's there, Henderson's not going to be that league winner. If Stevenson was to miss some games, then Henderson's absolutely going to be that guy. But in the playoffs, Henderson completely disappeared from this Patriots offense. We're talking about a backfield split that wasn't split at all. I think Stevenson was at about a 70.3% snap share there. We saw him average 9.1 fantasy points per game more than Henderson. He averaged 58.5 more scrimmage yards per game than Henderson, 7 more rushing attempts per game than Henderson. If you go from week 16 throughout the Super Bowl there, Stevenson averaged 5.51 yards per carry to Henderson's 3.19. Does that mean Stevenson's a better running back? Not necessarily, but it means that New England certainly trusts Stevenson when it matters the most. And for me, when I take a look at this, when I get into my fantasy playoffs, between these two backs, if they're both healthy and they're both in my lineup, I'm probably leaning towards Stevenson a little bit more than Henderson. And I think this is a 1A, 1B situation, but when it matters most, it's going to be Stevenson.
Do you think, Matt, when we think about how Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels have handled rookies in the past, now knowing that Henderson is not a rookie this season, yep, does that mean we should factor just like it's so weird because we don't see practices, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But I think like one of the things I think about is, well, maybe Henderson didn't get the opportunity that he did last year simply because he was a rookie. And we know how those coaches have handled rookies in previous stops in their coaching career. Now, should we just assume that those opportunities are going to magically present themselves this year because he's not a rookie? Or am I putting too much stock into that aspect?
I don't think Stevenson has done anything not to get those touches. If Stevenson punted his opportunity, I would get it. Yeah, Henderson, absolutely. But Stevenson was pretty good. I mean, we're talking about a running back who was very good for fantasy, very good for the Patriots. So I don't think they're just going to hand Henderson these opportunities when Stevenson's producing. I would love to see both these running backs on the field at the same time to see what they can kind of do in that offense. But if Stevenson's not fumbling the ball, I think he's going to be in the lineup. Now, Henderson has a few things he's got to work on in the pass game and whatnot there to get the trust of the coaches, but it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out the first few weeks, if the coaching staff can start to trust Henderson a little bit more, because there's no doubting the talent. But opportunities matter, volume matters, and right now I think it's Stevenson who they trust to be on the field a little bit more, and I don't think they're just going to automatically take touches out of Stevenson's hands just because Henderson's no longer a rookie.
For deeper analysis from Matt Donnelly, check out rotoballer.com in that Stevenson versus Henderson piece. Not the last thing we're going to be talking about from your work at RotoBaller. One more thing I want to bring up here, and I think it's interesting, and maybe not in a good way. Nick Kosmider wrote a story for The Athletic covering the Broncos, and he was talking about Courtland Sutton. And in his interview with Sutton, he said quote, I don't think, this is Sutton talking, I don't think that we have any individuals or personalities in our offense that are saying, hey, I need this, I need that. I think we have a bunch of guys that are willing to put their pride aside and say, what do I need to do for this team to be successful? This is coming off of Sutton saying he's sacrificing targets and numbers if that's what the offense needs this season. Why is this interesting? 2 reasons, in my opinion. One, the addition of Jalen Waddle, who to me is the number 1 receiver on this Broncos offense. The most talented guy, a guy that's going to be featured a ton, especially when you consider the draft capital that the Broncos gave up to get him from Miami. Why is this important? Reason number 2, think about how the Broncos spread the ball around last year with Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, Pat Bryant, Evan Engram, and then obviously Sutton. And now you have Waddle in there too. So I don't know. Like, I feel like Sutton is going the wrong way as far as fantasy value goes right now. And he seems cool with it, which is probably a good thing from a team aspect if you want to see Denver make it to the Super Bowl, but not a great thing from a fantasy aspect. People forget that the Denver Broncos were they may have been the most pass-heavy team in the league last year. So I don't want to start saying the ceiling is falling or the sky is falling or whatever on Sutton, but certainly if it's not falling, it is creaking a little bit above Sutton and his fantasy value right now in the FFPC Big Gorilla. I can tell you that Sutton has fallen to wide receiver number 40. And by the way, Quentin Johnston, we talked about earlier, has moved in front of him now. Sutton is now a mid-8th round pick. Could fall below Lemon. He could fall. I don't think it's much longer before he falls below Josh Downs, quite frankly. And I could see Wan'Dale Robinson moving past him as well. I'm kind of down on Sutton this year, and I don't feel like he is a good pick in the 8th round, Matt.
Yeah, I think this comes down to your scoring format. You mentioned Josh Downs, love him in PPR. Wan'Dale Robinson, love him in PPR. Courtland Sutton, not so fast, as Lee Corso would say. I mean, I think he's in that same boat. I think having him and Quentin Johnson close together in ADP makes a lot of sense. They're very similar type of wide receivers. I think I'd still prefer Sutton over Johnston, but I mean, what you just said here. I mean, I don't think Sutton has a choice but to be okay with it. I really don't. You take a look. Why did the Broncos pass a little bit more? Because J.K. Dobbins got hurt, and then R.J. Harvey didn't exactly take off as a runner. Great pass catcher for a running back, but he wasn't exactly breaking the walls down in the backfield, picking up yards after contact and whatnot. They couldn't get that run game going. They had to use the short passing game as an extension of the run game. That's what they did in Denver, and that set up the deep shots to these other guys like Franklin, Sutton, and however you want to go. I love myself Waddle. You mentioned you don't trade a first-round pick not to use a guy. You don't trade a first-round pick not to have him be the number 1 wide receiver on your team. It just doesn't happen. And Waddle, I agree with the point where Sutton was talking about. We don't have any guys that are selfish, right? We don't have anyone demanding the ball. Waddle, he's never demanded the ball. He's played second fiddle to Tyreek Hill. He's also been the number 1 guy, kind of like a Jarvis Landry type in his rookie few seasons, right? He was getting peppered with targets, wasn't getting a whole lot of yards. You'd get like 140 targets, but only 1,000 yards. That's who Waddle was early on in his career. We know he's going to get open. He's going to make things work for this Denver Broncos team. Bo Nix is going to have a nice little security blanket that he can trust all the time. Waddle for me is a borderline wide receiver 1 this season. I mean, maybe it's bold. I don't know if it's bold. I know a lot of people are high on him, and I know I can see exactly why. You got a good young quarterback. You've got a good running game to an extent there between Jonah Coleman, J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey. All of them kind of do different things there for that Broncos backfield. This is a good team. There's not a whole lot of this guy's going to be an absolute fantasy superstar. There's a bunch of guys who are going to help you win weekly that you can put in your flex. But I think Waddle's that one guy that I think can be a wide receiver 1. So, and if that's the case, Sutton has to take a back seat if he wants to have any kind of role in this offense moving forward.
The Broncos offense certainly going to be something to watch for sure this year. By the way, I just nabbed Jalen Waddle in my Scott Fishbowl, which I was pretty excited about there. Yeah, well, there you go. Yes, absolutely. We're Waddle brothers, essentially, now, Matt.
Well, then, you know what? Hey, as Duck Dynasty guys, Waddle kind of makes a lot of sense.
That is, yeah. But it would have been weirder if we both did not take him at this point.
It would have been off brand. We can't have that.
I want to, Matt, if you could throw up Matt Deutsch, if you could throw up Vegeta Super Saiyan 4's comment that you flashed before. We want to talk about it right now. And he's talking about Bears wide receivers. Thinks that they're a trap again this year. Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, 30th and 31st in accuracy in 2025, and the Bears have not had a 1,000-yard receiver in 3 years. And he thinks you'll be disappointed again. Well, contributing to that might be Loveland, who could prevent Luther Burden or Roma Dunze from being a 1,000-yard receiver this year, given how significant he was. I know Williams, the completion percentage was pretty bad last year, but I do know the Bears were, I don't know if they led the league in drops or drop rate, but they were right up there. So I feel like, and there's an ad, I mentioned Adam Hahn again, who's our resident Bears offense truther. And if he was here, he'd tell you that Caleb Williams is well worth the price of admission this year with this Bears offense in year 2 of Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams, by the way, the 208 in the FFPC Superflex Best Ball Tournament right now, the largest Superflex Best Ball Tournament out there. He's quarterback 7 in that. If you think that's just right or too high or too low, target him or fade him at your peril. $35 to get in that Superflex Best Ball Tournament, $100,000 grand prize, live and slow drafts filling up there as well at myffpc.com. That is where to sign up for the Superflex Best Ball Tournament. We'll take our first break. When we come back, we want to talk about the running backs, the workhorses, the sleepers, the sophomore breakouts, that and so much more. You're watching FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. He's Matt Donnelly from RotoBaller and Fantasy Points. I'm Eric Balkman. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm. And guess what? The big gorilla is back over at FFPC. This contest has $5.8 million in prizes and $1 million up top to the winner. And it's got a pretty reasonable buy-in of $350, access to the high-stakes community where the best players play in all of fantasy football. You go out and you win a contest like this, and people are going to remember your name. The FFPC Big Gorilla open right now, and $1 million coming home with you. And if you buy 3 teams right now, you get $50 back off the buy-in. You're going to want to buy multiple buy-ins to this contest because they also have the 7 bananas giveaway if you get the 7th pick multiple times. Check out the details over at myffpc.com on that, but you can get free best ball entries, free entries into the main event, which is a $2,000 buy-in contest, and possibly even, believe it or not, a jungle safari or $50,000. Your choice. I'm picking the safari. So go to myffpc.com, use promo code ALARM if you're a first-time player. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can get involved. And you know what? They also listened to you guys and added one more contest, the Baby Gorilla. Can't do $350? Why not do $125 buy-in, $100,000 grand prize, $675,000 prize pool? They have something for everyone over at FFPC, where the best players in the world play fantasy football.
We are back here on FFPC Insider Access, live on the Better Sports Network. My name is Eric Balkman, reminding you that the FFPC Best Ball Tournament now features a $400,000 grand prize. Last year was $300K. We added $100,000 onto that as well. $400K for first place, $100,000 for the runner-ups. You don't even have to win it to win a 6-figure grand prize. Drafts are going off live and slow right now at myffpc.com. $125 to enter. Make sure you're joining that. And which, by the way, we do have some drafts going off tonight in the Best Ball Tournament. I'm looking at it right now. We have available for you 7 spots left in the draft starting in about an hour and a half. At 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. So that one's nearly half full. We also have 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. for you West Coasters. The slow drafts are filling up there, as well as we got sit and goes. myffpc.com right now for the FFPC Best Ball Tournament. Being joined on the show tonight by Matt Donnelly from Fantasy Points and RotoBaller at Matt Donnelly FF on the X. I want to get into this. One of the pieces you produced for RotoBaller within the last couple of weeks about workhorse running backs. Now, I think that it's crucial this year to not only get an anchor running back or maybe 2 running backs early on in your drafts, Matt, but picking the right ones. What if you do have that 101? It seems like most people have kind of gravitated to choosing Jahmyr Gibbs over Bijan Robinson over the last month. I see a lot more Gibbs at the 101 than I see Bijan Robinson at the 101. But I don't know. There's two schools of thought on this. If you, Matt Donnelly, had the first overall pick in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament or the Big Gorilla or anything like that, would you be picking Robinson, Gibbs, or perhaps maybe Chase or Nakua, somebody else? How would you handle that pick?
Can I trade back? I mean, is that an
you
option?
Cannot. That, for the purpose of this conversation, you cannot.
Look, I don't think either one of these running backs are wrong. I mean, we'll take a look at last season. Bijan Robinson had 366 touches. Jahmyr Gibbs had 320 while competing with David Montgomery. I mean, we talk about that workhorse back. I think there was something like, 10 running backs last season that had 300-plus touches. So that's kind of that. Okay, there's where my workhorse is there at 300 touches. I would not be shocked if we see Jahmyr Gibbs hit that 413 that Christian McCaffrey hit last season. He could be up to 425. Like, he could have more volume. And it's not like Bijan Robinson has competition there. Out with Tyler Algier, in with Brian Robinson Jr., who sat behind Christian McCaffrey last season, collected a nice paycheck, only having to touch the ball like 100 times. But if you break down everything, Robinson, third in touches, 366, fifth in rushing attempts with 287, 2,298 yards of total offense, 11 touchdowns, RB2 behind Christian McCaffrey. There wasn't anyone catching McCaffrey last season, just that volume alone, especially in the passing game. We're talking 100 targets last season for McCaffrey. Since joining the Falcons in 2023, Robinson has seen his touches increase in every single season. I mean, 272, 365, 366. So we're seeing some consistent. And now we're getting captain check down to a Tagovailoa. I don't care. It's not Michael Penix. Michael Penix, he's already shown that he can't hit the broadside of a barn if his life depended on it. So, I mean, as for all of Tua's negative things there, the one thing he can do is check the ball down. Look at Etienne there from last season, the season before. I mean, I really like what Robinson can do here in this offense with Tua Tagovailoa in this West Coast offense. He's got the better footwork already. Stefanski's already talked Tua Tagovailoa up over Michael Penix because he's a better fit for this team. And if we dig deep into Stefanski's play calling here from 2020 to 2024 there in Cleveland, Nick Chubb, when he suited up in more than 12 contests, only Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook had more rushing yards than Nick Chubb had over that period of time. But again, it comes down to volume, and the difference between these two for me, as razor thin as it happens to be, I think Detroit could give Gibbs a few more touches in the passing game than what the Falcons are going to do with Bijan Robinson, only because we talk about Gibbs ranking top 3 in missed tackles forced per touch at 0.28, an explosive rank there of 15%. That's right there with the Achanes, the Robinsons, the Browns. He's a guy who's just, there's too much upside here for Gibbs versus Bijan Robinson because of David Montgomery no longer being there. Now, Isaiah Pacheco, he could be a factor, but he's not going to be any more of a factor than Brian Robinson in Atlanta. So for me, I do like Jahmyr Gibbs just a little bit more than Bijan Robinson, but I don't think you go wrong with either one of these running backs. Unless there's an injury, I think these guys are going to be 1-2 ahead of Christian McCaffrey. We talked about this at the start of the show. I think these are two running backs that are so far ahead of everybody else right now that if you have one of those top 2 picks, those have to be the guys.
I think the other thing and we're picking at nits here, obviously, but the other thing with Gibbs, if you're looking for a tiebreaker scenario, he doesn't have a new head coach. Bijan Robinson has a new head coach, and as a result, a new offensive coordinator, although I believe there's a new offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, for Detroit as well. But the head coach, the culture remains the same in Detroit. Maybe Stefanski's going to be great in Atlanta, but it is the unknown aspect of it where you kind of know what to expect in Detroit. Yeah,
the one thing that's exciting is Gibbs produced at a level that he produced at 13 touchdowns, despite seeing just 45% of the Lions' rushing attempts inside the 10-yard line. I mean, yeah, Pacheco might get some of that, but I mean, we know how efficient David Montgomery was. He's a banger. And I know where he's not kind of in this workhorse running back thing, but I think David Montgomery solo could be like Joe Mixon from 2 seasons ago. We'll talk about that probably a little bit later. But I mean, we're talking about a guy who we haven't even seen what that upside is. Bijan Robinson was already getting those touches inside the 10. Gibbs is just about to receive those touches inside the 10 here in 2026.
The one of the other running backs that you wrote about in this workhorse running backs piece for RotoBaller, Matt, was Ashton Jeanty. And if I'm old enough to remember, in January and February, or at least in February, when we had the big gorilla drafts going off, you saw Jeanty comfortably in late round 2, sometimes early round 3. And now it seems like this guy is just ticketed for being in smack dab in the first round until September, unless something were to happen. Okay, that changes it. But he's moved up to running back 5 in the big gorilla right now. 111 is where he's going. He just recently passed James Cook. He's ahead of Omarion Hampton, who was drafted in the first round with him last year. And he's knocking on the door of Jonathan Taylor, who I could definitely see Jeanty moving up ahead of him as well. Why do you think high stakes players and just fantasy players in general, why do you think that over the course of the last month and a half, we have seen Jeanty consistently go in the first round when you consider new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, new offense? There's a lot of unknowns in Las Vegas, but people don't seem to mind and take him at the end of the first round.
That's because all those unknowns, they're all positives. I mean, this is one of the worst offenses in the league. I'm a Raiders fan, and I will tell you, it was painful to watch. I mean, anytime your quarterback gets sacked 55 times and throws 19 interceptions, those are lost opportunities to get the ball into Jeanty's hands. Now, I'm not going to put him ahead of my boy there, James Cook, quite yet. I like Jeanty long term, but hey, I think James Cook is criminally underrated and being disrespected still. So, I mean, he's one of my guys. I drafted him in the SFB based on volume, heavy workhorse kind of guy. Touchdowns are going to be their better offense. Whereas Jeanty, you don't necessarily – the production may not have been there for him last season, but the volume, there's no mistaking. It was there. This was Jeanty's team, especially when Brock Bowers kind of went down. We're talking about 55 receptions. That was the 6th most amongst the running backs. He ranked, and I think his touches last season were ranked 6th most or something, or 20. No, I'm trying to think what the number happened to be, but he had top 25 of all time amongst rookie touches at the running back position last season with those whatever that 321 touches happened to be. So another guy that was part of that 300 club. But we know that the path to average fantasy production and being a top running back, it's not about averaging 6.5 yards per carry. It is that volume. And we know Jeanty's going to get that 22 to 25 rushing attempts per game. We know he's going to get 4 to 5 targets per game. So we know he's going to be up there around 30 touches. That's I don't think we can debate that. I think that's what's going to happen one way or the other. We know they improved that offensive line there with the addition of the center there in Lindbaum. We know that Kirk Cousins and Fernando Mendoza, they can't be any worse than what Geno Smith was last season. Again, part of that comes down to that offensive line. Part of that comes to the incompetency of Geno Smith last season within this offense. And this offense is now a Clint Kubiak type offense. So we've seen what he's been able to do in Seattle. We saw how he was able to get things changed for Sam Darnold. So if he can get some production there, we know they want to use 2 running backs. I mean, we've seen that with Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet last season. I'm not sure if Mike Washington Jr. is quite ready to fill that Zach Charbonnet type role, but this is a team where we can see that Jeanty was at his possible lowest last season and was still a top 12 fantasy running back. If any improvement on this offense occurs, if they can get the ball, I mean, Geno Smith was literally second in rushing attempts there with 41 last season. So we know that workload is going to belong to Jeanty. So for me, he is going to be that guy no matter where. And I got him as a top 5 running back, not just behind James Cook for me here next season. But listen, I get why the hype is there. I mean, it can't be any worse. And we saw he's still an RB1 at his worst.
The ADP for Jeanty is running back 5 in the big gorilla right now, but his ADP in FFPC Dynasty startup drafts is running back 3 behind just Robinson and Gibbs. If you want to take advantage of that ADP, and I think a lot of FFPC players do as well, Matt. Remember that we have Dynasty startups at the FFPC going off each and every day, anywhere from $100 up to $5,000 for your entry fee there. If you like playing fantasy football year-round, like the Dynasty Viper himself, Matt Donnelly does. And by the way, use Matt's Dynasty advice. He's turning out a lot of great Dynasty articles for RotoBaller as well. Check that out at myffpc.com/dynasty right now. For Dynasty startups. We have 2,200 plus Dynasty leagues at the FFPC. None have ever folded in more than a decade. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Now, if we move on and talk about another running back that I think is still pretty well valued in Dynasty, despite the offense that he's on, the Devon Achane conundrum. This is a player that is really lacking any kind of other playmaking threat on this team right now, which is bad because the defenses that he's going to be going up against are going to be focused on him. But it's good because the volume should be absolutely crazy town banana pants, as Heath Cummings would say. It's going to be absolutely crazy town banana pants with how many catches and touches he's going to get as long as that Miami offense can stay on the field. Again, we're talking about two different sides of the spectrum. There's people that are avoiding him, Matt, like the plague. They don't want any part of that Dolphins offense. They think it's going to be a train wreck. And there's other people that understand how high the usage could be, maybe the highest usage running back in the NFL this year if things go at least moderately okay in Miami. He's running back 10 at the 205. Which end of the spectrum does Matt Donnelly fall in on Achane?
So let's be honest, Miami is going to be bad. They can finish 0-17 next season. They have one of the worst constructed rosters I have seen. When Malik Washington is your number one wide receiver, you probably have like Malik Washington, Tutu Atwell. Then you're going to throw in Jalen Tolbert. None of these guys have done nothing anywhere they've been. Malik Washington, he wasn't terrible last season. I mean, the help is coming in guys like Chris Bell when he gets back from injury. These rookies that they drafted, eventually they're going to pay off at some point, but this offense is going to run through a chain. So I see why people are on that. We're talking about there's no other option in the run game. There's no other option in the pass game. Everything's going to run through a chain. 305 touches last season, 9th most in the league. We're expecting him to be more involved. His 12 40-plus yard runs since 2023, that's the most in the NFL. Over the last 3 seasons, 5.62 yards per carry with an explosive rate of 14.1%. All that sounds great. But if you're going to continually be the guy, Achane is not a big running back. He's not a Derrick Henry. He's not a bruising type guy. Those hits are going to wear him down at some point. Miami is not going to be playing for anything after week number 8. I worry that we may see Achane shut down earlier than what most fantasy managers want, because we're going to see high volume early on. But as the season goes on, every one of those hits, all those extra carries, they're going to add up. I don't think he's got the frame to be that guy, to be more than 315, 320 touches. I don't think this team is good enough. At least last season they had Jalen Waddle kind of take some pressure off the stack boxes, so teams couldn't just stack everything in there. And again, say what you want about Tua Tagovailoa. Achane's numbers with and without Tua Tagovailoa are two completely different things. With Tagovailoa, he was one of the best running backs in the game every single week, points per game. Without him, that production wasn't quite there either. So can Malik Willis channel his inner Tua? I don't know. So for me, the risk doesn't quite meet the reward. And there's some other backs here that I feel a little bit better about, that I feel a little bit more confident in, that I'm willing to risk the upside for a little bit more security.
You know, the other thing we should bring up here too is, and Joe King and Vegeta are going back and forth on this in the YouTube chat. How does having a rushing quarterback impact the catches, right? Or at least the targets for Achane this year? You know, I bring this up a lot, Matt, where I always get nervous about a pass catching running back playing with a rushing quarterback, because that rushing quarterback could easily just take off and run rather than dump it off to Achane. Vegeta points out 18% of his catches are on checkdowns. So that means 82% are not. He lines up in the slot. He's sometimes split out wide too. Again, we don't know exactly how he's going to be used in Bobby Slowick's offense. This is how he was used in Mike McDaniel's offense. But certainly that does give you reassurance if they continue to use Achane that way. But it is a bit of an unknown, because we just don't know how much he's going to be featured in the pass game. Maybe by necessity, as you were writing in your running back workhorse piece for RotoBaller, maybe by necessity, he's just going to have to be used heavily in both.
Yeah, I mean, if Miami wants to compete in any way, shape, or form, I mean, he's going to have to be that guy for them. I mean, we take a look at what the numbers are, even back as far as 2024. I mean, Achane was seeing a 16.9% first read target rate there for Tua Tagovailoa. So, and that's with Tyreek Hill, that's with Jalen Waddle. If there's no one else there, he's going to be that first read 80% of the time. So I do like the idea of him having that option, of being the guy. I just worry about how he can hold up being the guy when there's no one else around. So, I mean, I get both ends of the spectrum there. It comes down to what you're willing to risk. And again, if you're in the FFPC in a big stakes kind of competition, Achane is that the home run swing for you. He's a guy that can easily win you the league, but if he gets hurt, I mean, you're going to be chasing the points pretty much all season long. So it really depends on what kind of risk you're willing to do, what kind of risk portfolio you have for your fantasy rosters.
Yeah, Etienne definitely could be a league winner this year, even if you draft him early on. But if that Miami offense doesn't stay on the field, you do have your work cut out for you to try to cobble together $1 million winning team. We talked about Etienne earlier, about how I've had smart people on both sides of the spectrum talk to me about why he's going to be great or why he's going to be bad this year. I think I could throw Saquon Barkley in that mix as well. Now, I've been very pro Barkley. You wrote about him in this workhorse report as well. I've been very pro Barkley. I feel like this is a guy that was going at the 103 in FFPC main event drafts last year. Now he's going, he's raised up a little bit, but he was going later in the second round. Now he's at the 204, right behind Hampton and Brown, right ahead of Achane and Walker. You think about his possibility for a bounce back this year. Well, we don't know what the offense is going to be like, because again, like 2/3 of the NFL, we have a new offensive coordinator in Philadelphia, Sean Mannion, who's come over from the Packers to be the new OC, taking over for Kevin Patullo in Philly. We also know that the offensive line was in bad shape last year. Lane Johnson missing a ton of time. Cam Jurgens missed a bunch. I do know that these guys are all going to start off the season healthy. But I do know that 2 of these guys have gotten stem cell injections in the offseason as well, which to me doesn't bode well for long-term health in the NFL. When you consider that Barkley is going to cost you the 204 in drafts this year, are you willing to put your money where your mouth is, Matt, and say that, yes, I am buying the bounce back. I would take him in the main event. I would take him in the big gorilla there. Or are you shying away because you're not sure about his level of production and how it's going to be this season?
Yeah, I mean, I do have concerns about that Philadelphia Eagles offense. We saw it last year, and we always got the Jalen Hurts factor when the Eagles get on the goal line. So that's something you're always going to have to consider when you draft Saquon Barkley. For me, it comes down to who is still there at the 204 when Barkley's up, depending on my draft. I would probably shy away at that point from Barkley. We're talking about a running back who's had 280 plus touches in each of the last 4 seasons, 317 last season, produced 1,000 yards in each 4. That's the good. But here's the difference between him and maybe some other guys, like say Derrick Henry, and what production we've seen there. Derrick Henry has been relatively healthy, even though he's been putting the miles on throughout his career, where Saquon Barkley, he's got a little bit of rust going on there. He's got a little bit of damage on the rear fender. I mean, we're talking about a guy with an ACL back in 2020, and we talked about Mannion there being the new offensive coordinator, bringing an outside zone run scheme. The problem with the outside zone scheme and Saquon Barkley is the fact that what we've watched him is when he prefers to cut, that's that 2-foot type thing. And he's having to adapt on those outside zone concepts constantly, and that's not helping him where he's going to do. That's going to increase the risk of injury, considering some of the soft tissue he's had, some of the knee injuries, the hamstrings. Like, again, for a running back who's had as many touches as he's had, going back to a couple seasons ago with that playoff run, I think he was well over 400 that season. So I think he was even closer to 500. So we're talking about a running back who's had a lot of wear and tear. We're talking about a running back who has suffered some injuries there. Those are all going to start adding up. I think he's still going to be a running back you can count on in that RB10 to RB14 range. So I think he's going to flirt as an overall RB1. So I don't think it's a terrible thing if you draft him. But if you look at last season's numbers, we had a running back who had 5 top 12 fantasy finishes. That's the good. We also had a running back who finished as the RB20 or worse on 7 occasions. So he was RB20 or worse more often than he was a top 12 running back for fantasy last season. I think that's something we can't simply ignore. The volume's there. It's going to be good one way or the other. But, I mean, it comes down to touchdowns. It comes down to this new offense. And I don't think what Mannion does is he's going to have to adjust what he wants to do with running the ball to better suit Saquon Barkley, because I don't think he's going to be able to run those outside zone concepts and remain healthy for much of the season. Again, not a doctor.
Right. Yes. Yeah. But you did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. The workhorse running back report you can read at rotoballer.com that Matt Donnelly put together. I want to move on, Matt, and talk about another piece that you published there about sneaky RB1 plays this year. And I don't want to talk about everyone because I want people to go check out this article because it's very good. But I do want to talk about a few of them in here. These guys are all being drafted outside the top 12 in the FFPC Big Gorilla right now, but they all have the potential to finish within the top 12. I'll lead things off with Quinshon Judkins, who ended his season prematurely with a nasty leg injury, but he's been doing everything in camp, in mini camp and OTAs so far this season. Seems like the unquestioned guy in that backfield and put up some pretty good games last year as well. Why do you think we should not forget about Judkins in our Big Gorilla drafts when the pick rolls around and we're on the clock at the 410 and staring Judkins in the face as a top 20 running back being drafted in that contest right now?
Well, we're talking about a running back that in 14 games had, I think, 230 rushing attempts, 256 touches altogether, 827 yards, 7 touchdowns, average 12.1 fantasy points per game as a rookie. So he still had some things he needed to learn. He was grasping the concept. He was gaining the trust of the coaching staff. Now we have another regime kind of coming in there that they want to run the ball. And we look at the depth chart here in Cleveland, and I don't see anyone to really challenge Judkins. And again, for me, when I'm looking for these sneaky running backs, it comes down to opportunity. And Judkins has that opportunity here in Cleveland. I mean, we take a look at what the production is going to be behind him, and we look at this quarterback situation, and it leaves very, very little to be desired right now. Whether you're a Deshaun Watson believer, Shadir Sanders, I mean, Dylan Gabriel, throw in Taylon Green in there as well. I mean, none of these guys scream at you. So what I expect to see is plenty of screen passes. And last season, Judkins finished third in yards per reception on screen passes, averaging like 16.8. So he's going to be a factor in the receiving game as an extension of the run game and how you want to do it, because these quarterbacks aren't good. So they're going to have to find a way to get the passing game involved one way or the other. Judkins is going to have the volume. I mean, this is a team that's in a better spot than the Miami Dolphins. But again, it's all about the opportunity, and I don't see anyone breathing down Judkins' neck here for touches out of the backfield. And I think he's going to be a factor in the passing game. And again, if you want a running back to challenge for an RB1 spot, a top 12 finish, they have to be involved in the passing game in one way, shape, or form, especially in PPR leagues.
I have to point this out too. Bill Hollywood has entered the YouTube chat, and not only does Bill want to know what the belt is behind you, Matt, but I will tell you that Bill and his brother are drafting 5th next to you and Drake, who are drafting 4th in Pros versus Joe. So he's probably doing some early scouting on what you're saying about these players, so he knows who's going to fall to him, who's not going to fall to him, that kind of thing. But the belt is what he wants to know about.
Yeah, no, the belt every I didn't do it this past season, but every year we do a playoff challenge, and I actually finally won one after like 8 years, my own playoff challenge, and that happened to be it. So we'd always done, we take all the funds that come in and we give it out to a charity, whether it's kids play or like my family is very active in sports, so we want to give back to the sporting community here, especially in Canada. I mean, we see a lot of fantasy football charities south of the border, but we don't see that quite as much here north of the 49. So we try to give back to this community the best we can. We've done this for about 8 seasons outside of last season, and it finally all came together for me after like I think 6 finishes inside the top 10. We were finally able to get through there about 3 years ago. So that's what that belt is. It's something that I've been putting together every year, but last year because it just didn't work with the kids hockey. He played U13 AA. He just got signed by the U13 AAA team here this season. So we'll see what this year looks like come December, January for hockey, but usually that's a pretty busy time. I don't know if you've ever set up these leagues, but it can be a challenge from time to time to try and get everything going.
Yeah, it's not easy. Automation is your friend if you can ever pull that off, but I know it's hard. I think about for the FFPC playoff challenge, God, if we didn't have like a well-functioning website, it would be a total mess. And just throwing one together. And God bless you for doing stuff for charity too, Matt. That's great to hear, honestly. We're going to give the viewers a little bit more charity and give another name away in this sneaky RB1 piece for RotoBaller that you wrote, and that's Rachaad White. Now, I feel like everything you're talking about with the passing game, with Quinshon Judkins, you can say with Rachaad White, and maybe even to a higher level there. And the other thing that White has going for him, as of right now, not a lot of competition in that backfield. We have kind of a milquetoast Katron Allen, who they drafted on day 3. You have Jerome Ford, who I think his best days are behind him. And then you have Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, whose weaknesses are pretty well known. This could be Rachaad White's backfield. And quite frankly, with the lack of a second option, at least a dominant second option in this passing game in Washington, White may be in for a massive season.
Yeah, I mean, when people want sneaky RB1s, you got to go deep. I mean, you don't want to give the chalk plays that everybody's got. You don't want to go, ooh, I'm going to pick this guy who finishes RB14 to finishes an RB12. No, stop that. Let's go deep. Let's talk about things here. And let's not forget how good Rachaad White actually is when given an opportunity. In 4 seasons in Tampa Bay, we're talking about a running back who totaled 4,100 yards, averaged 4.7 yards per touch, averaged 50 receptions per season over 67 contests. We're talking about a guy who's getting involved in the passing game, a guy who's creating yards every time he touches the ball. White is only 3 seasons removed from RB4 overall when he averaged 15.8 fantasy points per game in PPR formats. In that 2023 campaign, he had 1,539 yards, 9 touchdowns, 70 receptions. And White has never finished with fewer than 40 receptions in any single season, which gives him one of the higher floors amongst running backs. And we're talking about a running back committee here in Washington that had Jeremy McNichols lead all running backs in receptions with 25. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, he was a non-factor in the passing game. He was actually barely even a factor in the run game outside of a couple games. We're talking about a running back who only had 180 carries. So, I mean, there's opportunities for Rachaad White, not only as a pass catcher, but to be the lead back in the run game as well. And if you want to go even further back, how about 2021 there, Eric, when it was White and Jaden Daniels at Arizona State? I mean, that season, White rushed for over 1,000 yards. He had almost just over 450 yards in the passing game on 43 receptions. And in that season, Daniels, he completed 197 passes. If you want to do the math on the receptions and totals and whatever, White was the beneficiary of 21.8% of those receptions. I mean, I don't know. We talk about this backfield, Allen, Krosky-Merritt, McNichols. It doesn't matter who these other running backs are. Again, opportunity is there for Rachaad White to be a big guy. And we know that there's no one else in that backfield who's going to catch passes. So that the entire passing work gives White a solid RB3 flex floor no matter what. He's a running back you can start every single week. If he factors in as the number 1 running back in the run game as well, yeah, he could definitely flirt with finishing in the top 12 next season.
The ADP on Rachaad White in the FFPC Big Gorilla competition right now is pretty low. And quite frankly, he has already risen up and it's still pretty low. Running back 35 right now at the 808 behind Kenny Gainwell, RJ Harvey, going ahead of Corum and Dobbins. For more names and players that you need to know about that could be finishing as sneaky RB1 players in 2026, check out Matt Donnelly's article at rotoballer.com. He's going to have more names in there for you on that. I want to bring up the sophomore breakout aspect here and ask you about 2 players and which one is more likely to have a breakout this year. Mm-hmm. Now, I just mentioned with Rachaad White where he's going. He's going ahead of Dobbins. He's going behind Harvey. So obviously the Denver backfield is one we're trying to get a handle on. And then the Jacksonville backfield. Yes, they lost they lost Etienne, but they added Chris Rodriguez. So before we can say, oh, it's wheels up for Bashal Tutin, we have to understand that this is a player that coaches seem to like, that Liam Cohen coached in college when he was the offensive coordinator at Kentucky, and now he's in Liam Cohen's professional backfield in Jacksonville. If I was to ask you, Matt, and I'm going to ask you, who's more likely to have a breakout season this year? Is it I beg your pardon, is it Bashal Tutin or is it RJ Harvey?
So Tutin is competing for targets and opportunities with Chris Rodriguez, who's not even working out right now. I think he's come back from an injury. Meanwhile, you got RJ Harvey, who couldn't take advantage of an opportunity last season, and he's competing with J.K. Dobbins, who just had like 1,000, was on pace for 1,000 yards before his injury, and then a running back they selected out of Washington there in Jonah Coleman. So, I mean, there's more competition there facing RJ Harvey, who I'm not big on. I mean, I can't be that guy in PPR leagues. I got no problem rostering him as a flex guy. But, I mean, we've seen what Tutin is capable of doing. I mean, he's at a different level. Going back to his college, 1,159 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns. And he did that on just 183 rushing attempts. That's 6.3 yards per carry. You want to factor Chris Rodriguez in and the love affair with Liam Coleman and all this other fun stuff. Rodriguez, his career high in rushing is 500 yards. He has accumulated just 920 rushing yards through 3 seasons. So he's averaging just over 300 rushing yards per year. We know about Etienne being gone now, but when we take a look at Tutin's rookie campaign, even though the volume wasn't there, the sample size is rather small. We're talking about a guy who ranked 5th in rushing success rate, 11th in missed tackle rate, and 17th in yards after contact per attempt. Any additional opportunities are going to put him way ahead of RJ Harvey here. I don't like it. I mean, Denver, you mentioned Jaguars may like Rodriguez. Well, Denver obviously likes J.K. Dobbins because they just gave him like another 2-year contract there. And Harvey, he was limited to just about 3.7 yards per carry in his opportunities there. He did catch 47 passes for 356 yards. But again, I'm not even sure if Harvey is the better pass catcher between him and Coleman. Because when we take a look at some of the numbers, I don't get the numbers exactly right in front of me because I was going to come prepared. Then I said, who needs to be prepared? But Coleman's numbers at Washington are actually, I think, a little bit better when we take a look at their final collegiate season where he caught 31 passes for 354 yards. That was better as a receiver than any season that RJ Harvey had at Central Florida. So, I mean, Coleman could be the better pass catcher here of the 2 running backs. That's something that we have to consider as well.
The better player to draft in FFPC chop leagues, if we're going to use that as an example, probably is Tutin. And chop leagues are a little bit different than regular leagues. You can avoid the weekly chop when you play FFPC chop leagues. What are they? Just avoid finishing in last place in any given week. And if you do that for 17 straight weeks, you will win cash prizes or free FFPC main event or big gorilla entries. Here's how it works. Every week, the lowest scoring team in your chop league is eliminated. Their roster goes back into free agency. The existing players, teams that are still available can pick up these players through blind bidding. Drafts available with us right now. 2-hour clock, 6-hour clock, 60-second clock if you want to draft live. 18-team leagues available in both classic and best ball formats. MyFFPC.com. FFPC chop leagues. Check them out today. We're going to chop our way to our final break here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these mid-round targets that you want to get at any position. We've been focusing on running backs, but let's talk about quarterbacks. Let's talk about tight ends, and then we'll talk about more buying the breakouts. We're going to find out if Matt Donnelly is buying in to any of these players I have listed as potential breakouts this season. He's Matt Donnelly from Fantasy Points and RotoBaller. I'm Eric Balkman. You're watching FFPC Insider Access. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
What's up, everyone? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm, and I want to talk to you about my very favorite format ever, and that's best ball. Yes, we all love to draft. Drafting is the best part of fantasy football, but if you do too many drafts in too many real leagues, you end up with too many lineups, too many trades, too many waivers. It's a lot of work. There's a solution to that, and it's called best ball. You go in, you draft your team, and then you're done. You don't need to set a lineup, no trades. The algorithm optimizes your lineup for you every single week so you can draft as many teams as you want. And the best place to play right now is myffpc.com, where they have the $125 buy-in with a $400,000 prize, and also a $35 buy-in super flex league with a $400,000 prize. Get in over at myffpc.com. Use promo code ALARM when you deposit for the first time. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can start drafting teams now and draft all summer long without having to worry about lineups or trades or any of that. Get in there at myffpc.com and start drafting best ball teams now through the rest of the summer.
You can certainly do that, Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm. You can also, if you wanted to, take advantage of the FFPC Baby Gorilla. It is the exact same format as the Big Gorilla, but this is your path. This is your stepping stone into high-stakes fantasy football, because you're competing for a six-figure grand prize, but just $125 to enter. You manage your team all year long. It's not best ball. You're going to be, crushing waivers and lineups and everything like that. The Baby Gorilla, it is brand new this year. Just under a $700,000 prize pool, $100K grand prize, and you can draft daily, both live drafts and slow drafts, available now through the start of the NFL season at myffpc.com. That is myffpc.com. Wrapping up the show tonight, we got about 25 minutes or so more with Matt Donnelly from Fantasy Points and RotoBaller. You can check him out on X at Matt Donnelly FF. By the way, I should have mentioned in that previous segment too, we talked about your sneaky RB1 running backs. That piece can also be found at rotoballer.com. And then, of course, everybody else we talked about, you have a ton of dynasty and redraft pieces available. Rotoballer.com is where to go for that. Matt, let's get into some mid-round targets at all positions. I'm going to kick things off with running back. And I want to focus in on Minnesota, because this is an interesting situation we have here. We have Kyler Murray taking over at quarterback there. But the Minnesota Vikings didn't do a whole lot as far as the draft and free agency at the running back position. Dan Williamson was on this show last week with me, the overhyped sleeper, who is a Minnesota Vikings fan. And I asked him about Damon Claiborne, who had been rising up in the FFPC Big Gorilla ADP. And he said, yeah, maybe there's something there for him for redraft. But then unprompted, he went into a diatribe about Jordan Mason and how excited he is for Jordan Mason this year. Where, Aaron Jones is the pass catcher, but if you look at some of what Mason was able to do last year on this team, it was pretty impressive given the surrounding cast and given the type of season that Minnesota had around him. Seems like he is big into Mason this year, running back 41 at the 10.06. It's quite frankly almost dead even with Aaron Jones, who has been electric over the course of his career. I think about how many passes he caught both in Green Bay and Minnesota, running back 39 at the 9.12. So basically a half round separating these guys. I'll ask you, if you're targeting one of these Vikings running backs, number one, are you targeting either of these Vikings running backs? And then if so, which one? And then how does Claiborne figure into that? Is he a late round target for you at all? Knowing that there's not really a strong, super strong stranglehold from any of these players on this backfield job.
So I love Matty there, putting my big ugly mug there every single time on the big screen. I'm sure the viewer, this is when all the ladies start to tune in. But when we take a look at these, Claiborne, I think his value is tied more directly into a Jordan Mason injury than it is a Aaron Jones injury. If Aaron Jones gets hurt, I think Jordan Mason takes over his backfield completely. I think if Mason was to get hurt, I think Claiborne's going to split some touches there with Aaron Jones. So I think we have to understand that. And we also have to understand that last season when both these running backs played in the same game, Jones averaged 13.7 opportunities per game and Mason averaged 8.5 opportunities per game. However, since 2024, 42% of Mason's runs have gained 5 or more yards. Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, they're the only running backs to produce more yards greater than 5 at a higher rate than what Jordan Mason was able to do. At some point, Minnesota is going to have to turn this backfield over to Mason and basically limit Aaron Jones's work to the passing game. Now, we know that Aaron Jones is on the other side of 30. For me to call anyone old, it's the pot calling the kettle black. I really have no right to call anybody old at any point. Like, I got more gray hair than anybody. This isn't just a shine off the light. This is actually white hair on my face. So for me, but Jordan Mason, 27, he's just entering that prime of his career. And hey, let's not forget that when Christian McCaffrey went down with the 49ers, we all remember that 5-game stretch. We don't have 1 game. We don't have 2 games. We have a 5-game stretch back in 2024 when Mason carried the ball 105 times. He ran for 536 yards. He averaged 5.1 yards per carry, and he had 3 touchdowns. So we know that he's got the ability to carry the load for a team if given the opportunity to do so. So if I had to choose between one of these 2 backs, I'm probably going to go and lean towards Jordan Mason here. But let's not forget that Aaron Jones, he has a good year and then a bad year, a good year and then a bad year. Well, last year was his bad year, so this could be a bounce back year. Better for a redraft, but Jordan Mason is definitely the one you want in dynasty leagues here, and it's not even close. I do think that at some point this season, this backfield, it gets turned over to Jordan Mason. Maybe it's week 8, maybe it's week 9. We'll see how it goes.
The longer that Minnesota stays relevant in the postseason chase, the better chances are that Jordan Mason is still the guy there, because that means they're winning games with their defense and Brian Flores and running the ball. If Aaron Jones and Claiborne start factoring in more, certainly that's probably not the recipe that Minnesota has to winning a lot of games this year. Seattle won a lot of games last year. They won the Super Bowl, Matt, and they won it without the services of one Zach Charbonnet, who tore his ACL prior to the big game. Charbonnet is going as running back 43 at the 11:05 right now. Mike McDaniel kind of said offhandedly, everything's on the table about whether he could be ready for week 1. I don't think he's going to be ready for week 1. Quite frankly, even if he is ready for week 1, I don't know how effective he's going to be. No matter when he comes back this year, I don't know how effective he's going to be. It's a fun clicking Charbonnet, who could be the lead guy in that backfield at some point. But I think cooler heads have always prevailed when I'm thinking about drafting Charbonnet. I don't think he is worth that 11th round pick. I'm finding myself shying away from him. How much of a target is Charbonnet for you in the mid 11th right now, Matt?
And cue the close-up. For me, I feel better about him like in round 14. Round 11 seems a little rich for me overall. We heard Seattle talk about how they want this to be a committee backfield one way or the other. And let's be honest, when Price is in there the first few weeks and it's George Holani and whoever else that they have, it don't matter. Emmanuel Wilson, it's not going to be that. It's going to be Price's backfield. He's going to get every opportunity early on to be the guy. We do know that when this does happen, this is a running back field with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Both running backs average 11.3 fantasy points per game. So there's 22 fantasy points per game on the table for running backs in Seattle. Here's where it gets a little bit weird for me, because I do think Charbonnet can be a league winner. I do think Charbonnet is going to be that guy who's going to get you 11 fantasy points per game. I still think he's going to vulture touchdowns like he did to Kenneth Walker last season when he gets back. The problem is you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait until probably week number 7, because the average recovery time is roughly 10 months when we're talking about that ACL injury. Week 1 of the NFL season, that's only 8 months removed. So now you got to add all this up. We're talking about February 20th is when he had surgery. So you're looking at week 7 before Charbonnet is right. Now, if you get him in the 14th round, then the risk is already baked into the ADP. But look, if I can get Charbonnet later, sure, I can be interested in a guy who had 12 rushing touchdowns and 66.7% of Seattle's carries inside the 5-yard line. That was the 8th highest amongst running backs last year. So, yes, I can get behind Charbonnet, but the price has to be right. It can't be the 11th. In the 11th round, I'm looking for that first guy off my bench, right? In lots of these leagues, I got 10 roster spots. That 11th guy is probably a guy I want to use during my bye weeks. I can't have it for a guy who I cannot use for the first 7 weeks of the season. So for me, I'm kind of out for Charbonnet unless I get him in the 13th, in the 14th round, which I think Yahoo's ADP has him somewhere in that range. FFPC, they kind of like those guys. They see the high upside that he does have, and we saw it last season. He can be a guy in a backfield that you can count on, but I'm not there. Not the 11th. No, not a chance.
Yeah, the guys that are going around Charbonnet right now, I get why people might not be into. I mean, we talked about Chris Rodriguez earlier. Keaton Mitchell firmly behind Hampton, although I do like him as an injury away type guy. Maybe he has a role even if Hampton doesn't get hurt. And then Coleman and Pacheco. So I get why people would be taking Charbonnet there. It's much more attractive to choose him over some of these other guys. Moving on from running back to wide receiver. Let's talk about Michael Wilson, another enigma wrapped in a riddle and smothered in secret sauce this year as far as trying to figure this guy out. Wide receiver 45 right now at the 906, Matt, behind Wan'Dale Robinson and Pearsall, ahead of Jaden Reed and Worthy. Wilson was unbelievable last year, but two big factors have to be taken into account. One, the Cardinals were getting destroyed basically at kickoff of every single game, and they had to throw. In fact, they had historic passing rates last year. And two, Michael Wilson's best games came when Marvin Harrison was hurt. Harrison is starting off the season healthy. Trey McBride is still there. Wilson, with all those factors still working in his favor, still just barely cracked 1,000 yards receiving last year. He also was one of these fourth-year breakout type guys or third-year breakout type guys, which usually doesn't happen anymore. So I'm very wary about the situation for Wilson there. He is a mid-ninth round pick, so I get it. But I like Reed, I like Pearsall, I like Robinson better than I like Wilson at that spot. Worthy, I think you can make a strong case for over Wilson as well. How do you feel about a mid-round target being Michael Wilson for you this season?
Well, as a fantasy analyst that's hoping for a 15th year breakout myself, you know what? I'm okay with Michael Wilson in that range. I mean, I still prefer Wan'Dale Robinson to PPR leagues, but like you said, the biggest factor here, it is the Marvin Harrison Jr. factor, because Michael Wilson was a non-factor when MHJ was in the lineup. Like I said, with Harrison Jr. on the field, he was targeted just 13% of the routes. He averages 7.5 fantasy points per game. You know what that was? Wide receiver 65 when Marvin Harrison Jr. played. So he's going with Harrison Jr. in the lineup. You're actually drafting him right now currently higher than where his production had him. Now, without Marvin Harrison Jr., he was Jacoby Brissett's guy. We're talking about a guy targeted 29% of the routes he ran. That was the eighth highest. We're talking 25.9%, 25.9 fantasy points per game. That was wide receiver one. Target share when both these guys were on the field. And this is key for me. When both Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, and Michael Wilson were on the field, Harrison Jr., 25.7% of the target share, wide receiver 11. Trey McBride, he was also at that 25.3% target share, which was tight end 1. Michael Wilson, 15.8% target share, wide receiver 49. There's your ADP. That's why he's going where he's going right now, because that target share dictates that that's where he should be going. I'm going to take Wan'Dale Robinson in PPR because he's going to get more targets. He's going to get more receptions than a guy like Michael Wilson. Now, Michael Wilson has more upside if something were obviously to happen to Marvin Harrison Jr., but we can't bank on injuries happening, right? We can't say, yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to get hurt this year, so we're going to go with Michael Wilson. No. When we're looking at these, I think logically speaking, I know he broke out as a fourth-year player, but there's very good reasons as to why he broke out, as you mentioned. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s health is the number one reason, and if Harrison Jr. is healthy, and we have to assume that he's going to be, Michael Wilson is not that guy that we saw him over the back half of the season.
The tight end position is one that we have not talked about a whole lot tonight. And because this is an FFPC show, I have to mention the tight end at least once every 5 minutes. So we'll bring up a tight end right now. But I'm liking the tight end I'm bringing up for this conversation, Matt, because in reading a lot of your stuff for RotoBaller, a name that has come up multiple times in your scribes there has been Gunnar Helm in Tennessee. Chigakonkwo is now in our nation's capital. And the runway is open for not only Helm at the tight end position, but this offense to ascend in Tennessee now with Brian Daboll at the controls. You have the number one pick in last year's draft, Cam Ward there. They've added Carnell Tate. They've added Wan'Dale Robinson. Perhaps Gunnar Helm is another beneficiary on this team that we're not talking a whole lot about. And if I look at the ADP in the Big Gorilla for one Gunnar Helm right now, it is super low. You can get him as tight end 25 at the 14-15 turn.
That is free right there. I mean, tight end 25, no one's even thinking about him. I low-key like this Tennessee offense. You got a running back in Tony Pollard who's ran for 1,000 yards 4 straight seasons. The only other running back in the league who's done that is Derrick Henry. Then you've got the additions of Carnell Tate, who's going to open things up. You got Wan'Dale Robinson who's going to open things up. You're going to have a situation here where he's going to be able to flow out there nicely. You got to remember, at Texas, his final season at Texas, even though he suffered an injury that hurt his draft stock, he still had 60 receptions, 786 yards, so we know he can catch the ball. He's one of the more athletic tight ends. He just gets completely forgotten because last season's tight end class was probably the greatest we ever saw. Tyler Warren, Harold Fannin, Colson Loveland, or Hyundai Gadsden. These guys all dwarf what Gunnar Helm was doing, so people completely forget. But yet, when we take a look at all the metrics and compare him to his peers that I just mentioned, he's right there. And that's what people need to understand. When we take about fantasy points per route, okay, so we got, first off, let me go back here a little bit and mention that he still, despite everything, despite barely playing last season, he still had the 3rd most targets on this Titans team with 55 and the 4th most receptions with 44. And Chigakonk, we just mentioned his 79 vacated targets. So now we go talk about where he stacks up with that class. Fantasy points per route run, Helms 0.37 fantasy points per route run. That was better than both Gadsden and Tyler Warren. And Tyler Warren is at 0.36, Gadsden was at 0.33. When we talk about on target per route run basis there, only Harold Fann's 24.7% was higher than Helm's 22.4%. When we compare first downs per route run and yards per route run, Helm, he's again in that conversation at 6.9% and 1.4 respectfully. So he's right there with these other tight ends that we're all talking about as top 12 options. The metrics are all there saying that he has the opportunity to be that guy. If you're getting him as your tight end 25, your tight end 3 on your team, he is the perfect guy to have as a second tight end anywhere. If you're drafting late and you grab yourself a tight end, say a Travis Kelce who could produce or he could completely fall back, Helm is kind of the guy you want. And if they can get him the ball in his hand, he did this all with just a 52.8% snap share there. That number is definitely going up with Okonkwo being gone. He also had a 9.1% evaded tackle rate. So when he has the ball in his hand, he is going to make things happen for the Titans and for fantasy managers.
Gunnar Helm is certainly an interesting pick, no matter the format in the FFPC, but perhaps very interesting in the new Player One format that we have developed. If you are looking for a draft that starts as soon as you enter, look no further than Player One. It is you versus 11 FFPC smart computer teams, essentially. 20 rounds, no kicker and defense if you want to play in the slim format, no head-to-head matchups in the best ball format, obviously. You can draft with a 60-second timer, and the drafts start off anywhere from 5 to all the way up to 350, $60 to $3,600 as far as prizes go. It's pretty fun. You get in, you sign up, you start drafting right away, and it's not drafting against ADP. I want to point that out too. And this is not simply just mock drafts or whatever. You can play this for some serious cash and win big with Player One with FFPC. No waiting, just drafting. You got to love it. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. That was Gunnar Helm. Let's talk about some other breakouts here, specifically wide receivers. Matt, I want to go back to Luther Burden. We talked about the Bears offense earlier in the show. There's a lot of people who are in on Luther Burden. It seems like the people who are not on him, the majority of people that I've listened to or read, it doesn't seem like they're totally against him. It's just the price that they're not a fan of, but they're still a fan of the fantasy or the potential fantasy production this year. Luther Burden in the FFPC Big Gorilla has steamed all the way up to wide receiver 21. This is a second-year player who got off to a rocky start in his rookie season that is knocking on the door of the top 20 receivers being drafted in the FFPC Big Gorilla right now. You have to invest a mid-4th-round pick to get him. He's going ahead of McLaurin, Waddle, Moore, and Mike Evans. Are you buying the Luther Burden breakout, Matt?
I am. I like Luther Burden. I just got him as my wide receiver 3 in the Scott Fishbowl. I made the selection while we're sitting here doing the show. It's hilarious. I was going through the show sheet here while we're kind of going through it. I said, we've already missed half the questions. That just tells you how much I talk during the regular course of the show.
Here's the thing, man. I jam way too much in this show sheet. That's the problem. I put so much content in here. But listen, I'm learning a lot from you, and I want to learn more about Luther Burden.
Well, yeah. I mean, first off, let's talk about his college. We're talking about a guy who we know can produce. Yes, his last season, not the greatest, but the season before that, we're talking about like 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 14.1 yards per reception. So we know he has that dog in him. We know he can be the alpha wide receiver on any team he goes to. But why is his ADP going up the way it is? It all comes down to how he finished that season. No one cares how you start. It's all about how you finish. And we're talking about a guy who closed out that season there, including playoffs. If we go over his final, I think it's 8 games, a 26% target share. He closed out the final 4 regular season games in which he played, averaging 15 fantasy points per game. And if you take a look at rookies across the board over the last 10 seasons, no rookie wide receiver had a higher yards per route run than Burden's 2.71. I mean, Burden, he also finished his rookie season with 481 of those receiving yards coming after the Week 9 bye, and that accounted for 74% of his season total. And the one thing that we know about the Chicago Bears is they spread that ball around pretty good. Loveland, he led the team with 713 receiving yards. Adunze, 661. Burden, 652. And then we have DJ Moore, who's no longer with the team, who accounted for 682 of those yards and 85 vacated targets with him going to Buffalo. So we have 600 yards and 85 targets that have to get picked up somewhere along the line. And I know Burden's not going to get all of it, but he should get about 25% of that vacated production, which should give him a very reasonable opportunity to crack 1,000 yards receiving, especially if he continues on the path in which he finished last season. So if Caleb Williams can get that accuracy under control, and there's no reason to believe that he can't improve year 3. He made a big jump from year 1 to year 2, because year 1, he was completely erratic. Year 2, he was somewhat erratic. But now the Bears have arguably the best offensive line in the National Football League. They've got a third-year quarterback, and they've got some weapons on this offense that, you know what? You can't just focus on one guy. Adunze can beat you. Loveland can beat you. Burden can beat you. So they're going to be able to continue to spread the ball out. So I'm really liking this Bears offense, and I think Burden is going to be in that conversation, that wide receiver, let's call it 16 to 22, somewhere in that range with weekly upside where he could be a wide receiver 1. I think he could finish in the top 12 5 or 6 weeks this season.
I had been drafting McLaurin and Waddle ahead of Burden previously, but I may have to rethink that and get some shares of Burden, because they're making some pretty strong points of how the target share could increase for him and how efficient he was that second to his penultimate year at the University of Missouri as well. One more receiver I have to ask you about, and the Colts wide receivers have been fun to watch and try, and maddening, quite frankly, to try to figure out. Back when free agency, prior to free agency starting, and then after Pierce inked that big contract with the Colts, he was going, pretty highly, within the top 30 receivers for sure. And then he slipped a little bit since then. And everybody was talking like Josh Downs is the brand new thing. Everybody's talking about Downs when you consider that we don't know what Pierce's availability is going to be for training camp at the start of the season as he recovers from this ankle surgery. Pierce is wide receiver 35 right now at the 705. But what about Josh Downs here at the 810? Now wide receiver 42, knocking on the door, perhaps leapfrogging over Alec Pierce in ADP before the start of the season. Downs, Matt Donnelly, has gone up in ADP, and I don't think he stopped ascending. I think he's still going to go up higher.
He's a guy that a lot of people in the fantasy community are talking about, and rightfully so. I mean, when we take a look at the tail of tape between Pierce and Downs, outside of Pierce getting that big contract, I'm not sure he's the better of the 2 receivers. I mean, Pierce has never had more than 50 receptions in any one of his 4 seasons. And meanwhile, Downs, he's looking to record his 55 or more receptions in his 4th consecutive season. So we're talking about a receiver who's been over 50 for 4 straight years and a receiver who's never hit 50 in his 4 seasons. Yeah. I don't get how we can I don't get where people are coming with Pierce. I know he's got that upside and, that touchdown ability and this and that, but digging deeper into that tail of tape, Pierce, he's caught 157 balls, the 297 thrown in his direction for 2,934 yards in his career. Meanwhile, and then obviously the 17 touchdowns, averaging about 100 and whatever that happens to be. But, I mean, we take a look at Downs, and over 47 career games, he's got 198 receptions on 292 targets, so much higher catch rate, and he's churned that into 2,140 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. So we're talking about a 6 touchdown difference and an ADP that just doesn't make sense right now to me. What makes him a big-time candidate for me, Downs, that is the 111 vacated targets by Michael Pittman here. And probably more important than that is Downs is going to get more play from the slot. Pittman ran a lot of slot last season. Downs, I think it was like 30%. So we're looking at a 30% increase for Downs coming from the slot, in which he's probably going to be indefensible, right? I mean, let's call it the way it is. He's one of the better shifty wide receivers. Putting him in the slot, that's going to create more opportunities for targets. And when we take a look at the quarterback play, Daniel Jones coming off that Achilles injury, he's not going to sit back in that pocket. He's not going to run around back there trying to make plays happen with his legs. He's going to need to get that ball in and out of his hands quickly. Pierce, big time threat down the field. Those take time to develop. Downs in the slot, that doesn't take time to develop. He's going to be open, and they're going to look for him or Tyler Warren or however that happens to be. We know Chris Ballard, he loves himself some Josh Downs. He says I think the quote was, I think Josh Downs is freaking good. I do. I always thought he was good. I think allowing him more opportunities, we're going to see him do some special stuff, more so than you've seen in the past. So, I mean, Chris Ballard's high on him. I'm high on him. Pretty soon, the FFPC is going to be even higher on him. It's a hype train. Get on now, because pretty soon it's not going to be worth getting on. I mean, the hype is going to go too far. We see this every year where the hype catches up to a player and he gets a little bit, whoa, let's pump the brakes here. Downs is going to be that guy where we're going to want to pump the brakes here in a couple of weeks, because that hype is going to get out of control. Right now is the best time to buy him. Right now is the best time to draft him.
Yeah, exactly. And right now is the best time to check out everything Matt Donnelly's producing over at Fantasy Points and RotoBaller.com at Matt Donnelly FF on the X. You can watch Matt draft along with his co-manager Brian Drake and colleague at Fantasy Points in the FFPC Pros versus Joes draft number 3. It'll be Tuesday, July 28th. He is picking from the 4 spot, and we'll cover that right here on the Better Sports Network, as well as the FFPC YouTube channel. Matt, always a pleasure. Glad we got to chop it up again with you this week. It's I always learn a lot. And for a 15th year breakout, you crushed it tonight. So thank you once again.
Hey, always a pleasure here. Always a pleasure coming here, talk shop, and looking for the next time.
That is Matt Donnelly from RotoBaller and Fantasy Points. We want to remind everybody, too, we're just talking about Pierce and Downs. Those are players you can draft in your FFPC Empire League right now. It is an Empire Dynasty League that half the prize pool is set aside every year. And then for the person who wins it 2 years in a row, they'll get not only that year's prize, but the prize pool that has been accumulating over years. And then the league disbands, and you're free to join another FFPC Empire League. Register now at myffpc.com. I want to thank Matt Donnelly and our producer, Matt Deutsch, tonight. We'll be back 7 o'clock p.m. next Thursday with Fantasy Points and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio's Joe Dolan, who will join me for 2 full hours. That's going to be a lot of fun. Check out the FFPC Big Gorilla. 9 spots left in the 10 o'clock draft tonight, 11 spots left in the midnight. Go out and win $1 million. For Matt Donnelly and Matt Deutsch, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access live on the Better Sports Network. Talk with you again next week.